oh, sorry, I just made this email with ChatGPT. And you shouldn't say just.
People underplay the fact that they use ChatGPT.
AI is helping a tremendous amount with discovery. Our main goal is to basically talk with the customers and get rid of all the ideas that are not going to work, get rid of the ideas that are just ideas. In 2 months, in 3 months, we can deliver 8, 7, 10, 5 different prototypes. The experimentation out of that is freaking cheap. It's just a single ChatGPT subscription and figure out your prompts.
Hi guys, welcome to the Productized podcast. This is the same podcast that you are already used to. We dive into conversations with some of the most creative, interesting people that we know, and some of these people happen to be speakers at the Productized conference, which is the case of Tamas here today. And today, I'm actually really thrilled because Tamás Kökény is our guest. Tamas is a seasoned tech entrepreneur, is a lead software developer, and is also a product development expert with over 15 years of experience. He is the co-founder and CTO of Bobcats Coding, a digital product studio with offices here in Lisbon and in Budapest in Hungary. He leads teams in creating innovative software solutions with cutting-edge AI integration, constantly pushing the boundaries of what's possible in digital products. And we're especially happy to have Tamas here today because he's probably one of the most knowledgeable people in AI development that I am aware of. And I think we're going to have a really interesting conversation on all of these topics. You're not necessarily more of, you are in the between a product person and a dev person.
Yeah. First of all, thank you for having me.
Sure.
Yeah, it's a good question. I consider myself a tech person with a good background in product because I failed so many products before. And I've seen so many products failing, and I also seen products going well. So yeah, I think devs should always have some kind of a product mindset. Definitely.
Yes. All right. So before we dive into the actual podcast, let's just start with this. A couple of fun questions. What's your favorite app on your phone right now? And you are living here in Lisbon, so to give this context too.
So I think my favorite app nowadays is Memrise. It's a language learning app.
Memrise.
Yeah.
It's like Duolingo?
Yeah, it's similar to Duolingo. The difference is, it's really important difference for somebody who moves to Portugal, that it has Portuguese, not Brazilian Portuguese. And it also teaches the words in a way that it records random people on the street pronouncing the words and pronouncing the phrases. And I think the hardest thing about learning Portuguese is to understand when Portuguese people are speaking.
Like real people, not
exactly.
Not the professors that pronounce the words.
And also not the proper
pronunciation.
Person, voice actor, somebody.
Right.
Yeah, and it helped a lot.
Okay, how did they record random people? They just go on and
I
say,
guess
hey, can you pronounce
they
this?
really just ask people on the street, like, can you pronounce bom dia or something like that?
Yeah, bom dia. Yeah. Man, that's such a funny story. I didn't even know about this.
Yeah, it's a really
Memrise.
Cool
Here it is. If you want to learn Portuguese, and I know a person that might want to learn a little bit better. So what's your favorite way to relax after a busy day? And again, just to give context, you live in Costa da Caparica, which is the beach town south of Lisbon.
Yeah. So the best thing about Costa is is the ocean. And regardless of the weather, I really like to go down and just walk on the shore after a busy day, and especially the sunset there. It always sets through the ocean. It's an amazing thing after a busy day, definitely.
We are facing west, so the sun is always there, always going down on the ocean. Or if you live close to the ocean, of course. All right, so which is your case. All right, so going to talk a little bit about your journey, Tamas. let's kick things off by talking about your tech journey. What inspired you to become a software developer?
It's a good question. Actually, I'm not one of those tech persons who like started programming when they were 8 on a
Really?
Atari machine or something like that. My father was a programmer back then, but he moved to be an entrepreneur and he was selling minerals. So he wanted me to get closer to tech and
So he
do
was
something.
he was a developer back in the day.
Yeah, like
when
in the 80s.
Hungary was one of the leading Eastern countries in
Yeah,
in
yeah, yeah,
tech, right?
exactly.
Because it was one of the hubs.
Yeah,
in,
yeah, yeah,
in,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
in
He was
programming.
back then a programmer, and he kind of wanted to show me when I was a kid how fun it is, but I never cared.
This is Tetris.
Yeah.
I don't care.
Yeah, I cared about the game, but
Okay.
not like doing something useful with the
What
computer.
what kind of computers were you like? Western computers? Were you still
Yeah,
using Eastern computers back then?
I think we always had a computer at home because of my father,
Which is rare for
but
our generation.
but I've never. Yeah, it's rare, definitely.
Here in Europe.
Yeah, but I never had to touch it because it was for work for my father. So it was, I think, quite late when already we had the Western types of computers, like, I don't know, in the late 90s. when
IBM.
Yeah, like,
kind of
like
PC.
normal PC type of computer. So I don't have the hero word of, I don't know, an Atari or something like that. And even the Eastern types of computers.
So what happened? What was
Yeah,
your
actually, I
passion?
wanted to be a sound engineer, and I went to the Technical University of Hungary, and my very first course was a programming course, and it was quite hard, and actually I failed it first, but then the second time when I repeated it, I was doing the homework, and it was 6 o'clock in the morning, and I was like, oh my God, I enjoy this. It's amazing.
Yeah.
I never thought that this fun.
Which language were you?
Back then it was C and C++ that I started with.
which are hard
Yeah,
languages. to
yeah,
learn
it was hard.
for beginners.
Yeah, and basically, my role model was my cousin. My cousin had a really small software development agency in Hungary. He's like 6-7 years older than me, and I was a ticket collector in a theater. And he said, for the same amount of money, I could do HTML and CSS for him, and come and let's do it. And he just showed me, this is the documentation of HTML and CSS. This is how it should look like. Go. And I really enjoyed it, and I really learned that it's basically something that you can learn on the job, and I also learned that I have a passion for it. So I worked in his agency for 3 years.
What happened to your sound engineering course?
Yeah, I was actually also fortunate enough to be able to speak with sound engineers and figure out what's the job exactly and how hard it is and how it's a struggle to get jobs and basically make a living of it. And I also have seen that right away I can get paid with a bit of HTML and CSS and the difference. And also I felt the passion for it. So I still, for example, there's a small jam session in Costa de Caparica every Wednesday that I participate in. But
So you still have like the bug of the sounds.
Yeah.
You
But
didn't really go through that.
yeah. But I'm not, and I'm also not sad about it. Tech is so big and vast and amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So you've grown up in Hungary. So how did it shape your approach to technology and product development? Are there any aspects of the fact that Hungarian language is so orthogonal to anything else in Europe?
Yeah.
That helps develop this programming mind of yours, or especially because Hungary has, arguably have had some
I think
the brightest genius in computer science, right?
Yeah, I think we definitely have the historical background in computer science, but I think I was really lucky in the point of time when I started my career and I grew up in tech, because that was the time when some of the first big Hungarian tech startups like Logmin and Prezi uh, and these companies started to become successful, started to become
Success stories,
success
role
stories,
models.
role models, and actually I left my cousin's shop after 3 years and I joined Prezi and as a junior software developer. And I think that shaped my mind a lot about, okay, what's possible, and also how much different environment you can make to the traditional Hungarian culture. And basically these were the first companies that brought the Western thinking and then Western startup mindset to Hungary. And I was really lucky to be able to experience that. And also these startups basically started the whole startup culture in Hungary. These were the first that showed that it is possible, and that's why a good amount of Hungarian VCs started to invest in small companies. So after actually half a year spending at Prezi, we started our first tech startup, and we applied to all the actually all the accelerator and incubator programs that there are in the world. We made an Excel sheet and we applied to everywhere, and we got into.
So this was back in
It was in
2013?
Yeah, 2013 exactly.
Right.
And we got into a program in Estonia, an accelerator program for 3 months, and one in Chile called Startup Chile. It's a incubator program for six months.
Yeah.
And we also did a.
So you actually went to Estonia?
Yeah,
and
we
then
went
to Chile.
Yeah, in 2013 January I went to Estonia for 3 months, and from April I went to Chile, and we also did a crowdfunding campaign before it, and that's basically how we started our first tech startup. And actually we failed miserably in many ways. We experimented with a good amount of things. It took us basically 1.5 years to find product market fit, and basically that's where I found that you shouldn't be attached to your ideas, and you shouldn't just be inside the closed doors and just thinking about your problem, but rather right away you should speak with your customers. You try to validate things and so on. Because when we started to mind shift on this, and we basically, we built something for 1.5 years that failed miserably in many ways. We have a small amount of technology. Let's try to market it with 10 different value propositions. And we marketed it, and we figured in some channels one of the value proposition kicked ass. And basically in 3 quarters we created an app that had 130,000 users.
What was this app about?
Back then Tumblr was quite big, and it was quite hard for Tumblr users, especially visual bloggers, to maintain their blogs, because to have a visual blog that's successful, they had to post around 10, even 20 pictures daily.
Right.
And their problem was to find these quality pictures. So we created a media aggregator that looks through all the apps that are not Tumblr. So Twitter, Instagram, and so on, any source that's not Tumblr. We analyzed the blog. We figured out what type of images they like. And we basically recommended images to them that, okay, these are the images that could build your blog on the long run. And our monetization strategy was to basically have placed images as well, so ads and so on. But on the end, basically we wasted 1.5 years of investment money, and we ran out of the runway. Yeah, but it was a really, really nice experience.
Was the team solid?
Yeah, definitely. Actually, with the same team, we started an agency after that. That was called Lab.coop, and the idea was that it's a venture builder company. We started to work for other companies, and also we started to experiment with ventures. And the first successful venture was Green Fox Academy. That was
a coding bootcamp.
Coding bootcamp, exactly. In Hungary, we haven't had, and actually even anywhere in Eastern Europe, we haven't had coding bootcamps 2014.
So coding bootcamp in this case for people that wanted to learn
Exactly.
HTML or
Yeah, so it was, the idea was it for our target audience was people in their 30s that fed up with their careers and they wanted to change to tech and wanted to become programmers.
and this coding bootcamp, was it a success? Did you
Yeah,
have
definitely.
lots of
So
people?
on the end, it was running for 8 years. We had more. On the end, it was in Slovakia, Czech Republic, and Hungary. We had more than 3,000 people graduated.
Wow.
On the peak, it was like 100 employees. So it was quite big of a success.
What was your role in this
I was
project?
head of the technology and education. So I was responsible for the curriculum and I was responsible for managing the mentors.
Was this in-person training?
Yeah. Like we started in person before COVID. Like we started it in 2014. And of course, in 2020, everything had to
Everything
go
had to
online.
go online.
Yeah. And it was a nice experiment. And also it's a nice experience. But on the end, I really got tired of quite a few things. One was the whole Hungarian regulation around student loans. On the end, I figured that basically the last year I spent on reading about laws about student loan and how can we accreditate our school to become something that eligible for student loan and so on. And I figured that I think I didn't start in my own company to to work on something like this day by day. And I also felt that whenever I was speaking with people from big companies, because in many of the cases the business model wasn't just the tuition fee from the students, but also we were placing people at the companies. And when I was speaking with companies and people from companies that were big, like more than 1,000 people, more than 4,000 people, I always felt that I'm the guy from the small companies and I don't even know the language they are speaking.
Right.
I don't know the incentives, the ideas, what's going there. So I really wanted to have the experience that, I would like to work in a big company and figure out how that works. So I was quitting my entrepreneurship job and I was working first for Cloudera. That's a big US-based startup that had an office in Hungary. And then I moved to Portugal 3 years ago. And
why did you move to Portugal?
my girlfriend got a job here, but it was conscious. We loved Portugal before. We have been here. Lisbon is awesome. Porto is awesome. The countryside is awesome. People are awesome. Food is awesome. Weather is really nice. So during COVID, we were like, how nice would it be to live in Lisbon? So she got the job here and we moved. And then Kazu started an office in Lisbon. So I joined there. But it was kind of a thinking ship. So they also closed the office. And actually before the office closing, like 2 months before I quit, and Datadog was starting an office back then.
Right.
So I moved to Datadog. And
Lisbon has become a popular hub for some of the tech companies and startups in recent years.
Yeah.
What do you think makes Lisbon an attractive location for tech entrepreneurs? And
it's
digital
definitely
nomads and
uncomparable
companies?
to Eastern Europe. Like in Hungary, you definitely don't see this amount of cool companies opening offices.
What do you think? What is it in the water, literally? Or what is there?
It's a good question. I think in some cases it's the time zone. So for an English company, for a US company, it's closer to their time zone, and it's an easy decision. But I think it's also kind of a critical mass already have been achieved somehow, and I don't know what was the black magic there. Maybe Web Summit, maybe. But some kind of a critical mass happened that basically made it that cool that now everybody wants to be here.
Including yourself.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
your girlfriend.
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe asking to the person, not to the company, what makes it cool for you to be here? Yeah, and your wife.
A lot of things, from doradas to the sunsets.
Mm-hmm.
So I really like the food. I really like the nature.
You said dorada, the fish?
Yeah.
Okay, I wouldn't be able to translate that.
Yeah, sorry. So it's a Portuguese dish. It's a grilled fish. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Uh,
It's very close to sea bass. So.
yeah. I also like the culture. I also like the people. I think it's a really nice mixture of happiness and go outness, but also orderliness. It's I don't know. I think it's a perfect spot, especially for somebody from Eastern Europe, because it's not too sterile. And I really love that in Eastern Europe that it has some kind of a sad, non-sterile feeling that also happened to be here, but in a happy way. And I cannot really describe that.
Okay, man, that was a very poetic way to put it in a way. All right, so getting back to Bobcats, which is really the company, the agency that you have created after this, corporate experience of yours.
Yeah.
What was the inspiration behind creating Bobcats Coding?
Yeah.
And what vision did you have back then when you first started a company? Because there's a bunch of MVP studios nowadays.
Yeah.
So what are you guys bringing to the market, or what's really behind the behind story?
So I think what we really bring is the product mindset, and basically saying no to things and helping customers to say no to ideas. We started the company because we still have long-term goals. We really like to have some kind of a social business, and especially in the realm of education. I co-founded this company from some of the founders of Green Fox Academy. So basically you can tell why the name is Bobcats. We like these kind of brands when it's an animal.
So after
I think
Fox,
it makes it relatable. It's but we also wanted to create a brand that's inclusive. We have a goal to have a lot of girls working as software developers in the company, and because of the background we have with the bootcamp, we actually able to achieve that. The graduates of that bootcamp, and it started 8 years ago, so there are quite a few people that are quite good experience now. 30% of the graduates were women. So, and I think even if you have 30% of the programmers as women in your company, that's way more than the average.
Yeah, that's way more than the average.
Yeah.
So you have two, you have two vibrant cities, Lisbon and Budapest, and I guess most of the tech talent nowadays coming from Budapest, because that's where you had your offices as well. Any plans to expand in Lisbon as well? Yeah,
definitely. So we started to organize meetups here. We are organizing the Lisbon JS meetup, actually. We are also... so we really want to embed ourselves into the Lisbon tech community. And that's why we are going to conferences and so on. Yeah, the tech hub of Lisbon is really a thing, and we really see the opportunity here. And it's also about the startups. I think our dream clients are either big companies or small companies that would start some kind of a product line. So either a startup that starts a product from ground up, or a bigger company that would like to start a new product line and experiment with something new.
So let's talk about the startups.
Yeah.
When they approach you, I guess one of the problems most startups have is they're not funded yet. So they're like in this dilemma of, I would like to work with you, but we don't have money yet. So how do you solve this equation?
Actually, so far we were quite lucky with this, and we got approached by startups that already get some kind of a funding, or at least they had some kind of a friends and family and fools round, and they're able to start some kind of an experiment. But we are definitely, I think any of the product builder companies have to be conscious about the needs of the startups. And it's really not just about building the product, but build something that's appealing for investors, build something that helps them to do the pitch and so on. So in many of the cases, we weren't just building a product, but rather building a landing page that's convincing enough for an investor pitch, helping them to build the slides, the text slides in their pitch and so on. So, and also building some kind of an experiment that shows that, okay, they are able to build some kind of attraction.
So before we were actually doing this podcast, you told me that you had, or you still have, I don't know, a little bit of PTSD with venture capital. And now you're helping others going through the process. But so I guess, having PTSD is just that. It's, it is what it is. Have you been able to overcome this PTSD of yours?
Yeah, so I think I wouldn't overcome. So that would be the case, and I haven't overcome it if I couldn't help other people to get funded. And I think I'm able to do that because, for example, one of our most successful clients is a US-based startup that is working on its second run now to raise money. And it's quite successful, and it's not just because of the great amount of work and an opportunity that they got there, but also the technological field that we were able to give them, or the technological aspect of the whole pitch. So if I would be still PTSD'd about that much, then I wouldn't even have these companies. What I'm PTSD'd about, I don't want to build my own startup in a way that's not funded in a source that was basically grassroots and created by myself or by a team that was created by us.
So don't you think that to a certain extent, if a startup team is using services from an MVP studio, they are faking it to a certain extent, or is it is okay because it doesn't really matter what they need, is just to get something out there.
So one of the clients, and actually it's the same client that I'm talking about. It's a client that I worked with 8 years ago with the product venture company I talked about. And back then, we were an MVP shop for them. They had an idea. We built the MVP. It was kind of like a 4-5 months or even 6 months long period. We built it. And after that 6 months, they gradually started to hire people for themselves. And basically, we went out of the story. And the same person came back and asked, are we still working with that company? I said not, but we are having another setup. And he started with the question or the statement, I don't want to have it just for the MVP. I want to grow with you. And I don't want to build my own team because it's just a pain in the ass. And I would rather trust somebody who's able to do it and has the knowledge of that and so on. So I think it's also possible to never basically build your own team because there are people who are more expert on that. I've built teams, tech teams a good amount of times already. And if a tech entrepreneur has experience in sales, in building the business processes and so on, why do they need to learn the whole thing rather than outsource it to somebody who had done that?
Yeah, I would say that lots of accelerators are still very biased towards having this classical founder team, CTO and then CEO and maybe a more product person or salesperson or whatever it is. And that's the classical trio that has been power the startup revolution, so to say. How do you see this? Is this actually changing? And you're seeing the venture capitals also?
I don't know if it's changed already. I definitely see examples because I'm working on one.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I think if we would behave as an average agency or product studio, then I wouldn't recommend ourselves. Because I think the problem with these studios that they would like to maximize their profits, and they don't care about basically the product, and they don't care about the product development, or they just care about, okay, we deliver all the features, everything is ticked, we are paid, and that's it. Our main goal is to basically talk with the customers and get rid of all the ideas that are not going to work, get rid of the ideas that are just ideas, and rather build them for 3 months. Let's create an experiment that would validate that idea and so on. So I think a company has to have this mindset about it, that it's a conversation with the client and not like maximizing the amount of features that we pump into the product, because that's the best for our cash flow. If we would do that, yes, I wouldn't recommend that for a startup. We are proud of that on a day a customer asks us for a feature and we say, no, we're not going to build that.
So
even though it would give us a good amount of money, that's our goal is the long-term success of that product. And for that, I think the most important part is to validate your features.
So you're also doing a little bit of the product management
exactly.
of the product, and saying no to a paying client is always a difficult conversation. How do you go through that?
I think it's also, that's the first thing that basically the decision point if we're gonna be working together or not. Because the very first time when we talk with a client, they would come with an idea, and right away we would approach it in a way, okay, how are we going to validate it? And how are we going to create an experiment to validate it? And how are we going to create multiple experiments to validate it? And if that client is like, but I have the idea, you just deliver it.
Just do it.
Just do it. Then good luck, find another.
Okay. So this is
shop.
your liquor's test to
exactly.
Shall we be working with this
and we
or
definitely have companies that we haven't worked because of this, because we felt that's not the chemistry, and we really want to build products, and we really want to build a team that is able to build products, and it's not about the short amount of time and money it's able to pump out features. If a startup is doing that, then it does the same thing that we did for 1.5 years with our first company, and we have no traction with that.
All right. So at Bobcats, Coding, you've embraced a flexible, remote-friendly culture.
Yeah.
And I think that aligns well with your own digital nomad lifestyle.
Yeah.
How has incorporating this culture affected your team and the way you operate, specifically because you are also the CTO of the company? So I guess you have a bunch of people that are reporting to you and you have to work with. So how does it work?
Actually, it wasn't even a question at the beginning when we started it, if it's going to be remote, because my other two co-founders are living in Hungary, and they are also mothers with really young children. So right away we had to figure out.
Talking about the CMO?
The CMO and the COO. So both of them are having the name Barbara, just different Barbaras, and one is mother of one, the other is mother of two. Both of the children is like less than 4 years old. So we had to figure out a way where we have a work culture that accommodates everybody. And we also wanted to build a culture that accommodates on the long run people that are in a similar situation. So I mentioned that we wanted to hire people, diverse people. And for example, if you would like to hire a mom, you have to have a setup where it's totally online and totally remote and totally flexible in time and so on. And it's also useful for our clients. For example, one of the biggest clients I mentioned is from the US. There are time zone differences. There are problems around this. So you need to figure out a way where it's not just, okay, go into the office, it's from 9 to 5 and that's it. And I think COVID have changed a lot of minds around this, but I also see a trend that big companies are like, okay, COVID happened, it's over, let's go back to the old ways. But I think COVID kind of proved it that it works. And it's also proved that if a culture is embracing it and it's one of the first principles, then you can build something that's more inclusive. And because of that, I think the culture is going to be better, and also you're going to have a better team. So, yeah, I think I wouldn't do it any other way.
Have you been able to hire people from different locations because of
Yeah, definitely.
this?
So one of the examples that couldn't happen without this, that we had a girl who had this situation that she's got a US-based now husband, but back then boyfriend, and they basically were quite tired of moving around because she couldn't move to the US with an EU passport and the other way around. So they decided, okay, she's going to move to the US, they're going to be married, and on the long run, she will get a green card. And she was like, okay, until I got the green card, I'm not going to be able to get a job there.
Right.
And even in the very beginning, she said, on the long run, I will like to have a job in the US. But she's still working with us. Now she's looking for another job in the US because she already got the green card. But she was working with us for 2 years from LA. And we are really glad that this happened. She's an amazing developer. Also, it was quite nice that we had somebody in the US with the US client who was in the same time zone. She was able to help there and so on. Without this flexibility and without this openness that, okay, come to us, we wouldn't have this opportunity.
Yes. Yeah, that's a great example of, the kind of possibilities you're opening with remote work.
Yeah. I like all food that's Lisbon offering.
Okay.
Yeah,
Wow,
I gained
that's
15 kilos since I moved here.
to Portugal. Yeah. When people get to Google, they get the 3, I think they call it the 6-pound Google.
Yeah,
thing,
yeah,
because
yeah,
they go to the Google cantinas.
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And
yeah,
the
yeah,
Google
yeah.
cantinas, they have all the food you want,
Yeah.
and you can just serve yourself.
Yeah, I felt
Here
the same with
in
Lisbon.
Portugal is a 15 kilo.
yeah. Oh god, the food is so
Because
good.
you have to actually pay for the food. So I don't know how does that compare to. But we're recording this, but we're not still on it. I don't think this necessarily needs to go to the podcast. It's behind the scenes. It's for the people.
I'm happy to share whatever.
Well, okay, so all right, so Tamas, let's dive into an area where I think Bobcats Coding is truly making waves, which is working with no code or low code, and specifically also AI implementations and LLMs.
Yeah.
It's a hot topic in the tech world, and a lot of people are talking about it. And your team seems to be at the forefront at integrating AI to help developers become more productive.
Yeah.
And that's also one of the topics of your talk at Productized conference, which is?
Yeah, so I think the main idea, and this is what I would like to convey in the talk as well, that when people are thinking about AI, right away they think about features that were impossible in products. And yes, I think that's an accelerating and nice thing about AI, that we're going to have products, and also already we have products that were impossible. But I think there is a more important thing here, or at least for me, it's more exciting, that AI is helping a tremendous amount with discovery and a tremendous amount with basically validating your feature ideas. Without the AI tools and without no-code tools and so on, it took to create a high convincing or high-level prototype for a good amount of time. So yeah, you could do some prototyping and you can do some experimenting with, I don't know, a Figma prototype or something like that. And I think that's still useful. But to have that very short stage where you have something that's you're not totally embarrassed about, and you're able to put it out and basically really have some kind of a marketing campaign as well that brings users to that.
Like a working prototype.
Yeah, like a working prototype that really took like at least 2 months. I think you were happy it was a 2 months development, but like a 3 months development cycle in average, and with either like 2 developers or 3, and a designer and so on. And I think with these tools, you can shorten this to a couple of weeks. And this is why we did this experiment that one of our colleagues basically recreated a small feature set, so not everything about it, but the small feature set of X, or formerly known Twitter. And he'd done it in 2.5 weeks with everything, with design, with coding the whole thing.
So that was like an internal crash project that you guys decided, okay, let's take a big challenge.
Yeah.
You know, X is not necessarily a very small thing to do.
Yeah.
And let's try to do it in as
Exactly.
fast as we can.
So it's definitely not a product that is already able to handle millions of tweets and so on, but to build something where you're really able to validate your product market fit, and you also validate the whole user flow.
But here you were not necessarily validating.
Yeah, we are not validated, but we wanted to show that to build something that's good enough for for a marketing campaign, how much time it takes and how much cheaper it is. And basically you just have to pay a single person for 1.5 weeks compared to, 3 or 4 people is working on it for 2 months.
What was the magic here for this developer to develop?
I think multiple things. One is all the AI tools that are already available, and also all the AI integrations that are available in these no-coding platforms. So in one hand, you can really easily generate a good amount of ideas and also right away working front ends with many of these tools. But also in the backend processes where you would need to do something with the data, save it or anything like that, there are a good amount of basically shortcuts that you can do with AI tools. So with good prompting, you can create a backend or a backend feature that does what you need to do with simple Airtable or even Google Sheets or something like that databases. That's definitely not going to scale, and definitely you're going to throw out the whole thing. But if it's that cheap that somebody built it in 1.5 weeks, and it's convincing enough that it would work in 90% of the time of the use cases, and you're able to validate it on real users.
But still using a professional to do it.
Yeah, definitely.
This is not for the average person.
I think everybody could do it, but yeah, they definitely have to learn these tools. And I think it's easier to learn these tools if you already have a technical background.
Right.
And also it's easier to learn these tools if you already have a workflow. And it's, for example, this person who did this setup was a developer, and he was already using all these AI-based tools day by day. He knows the whole mindset about it, that it's a conversation. It's always changing the prompt, figuring out, going back and forth with these AI tools, not like generate me something and right away it works.
Create a copy of clone of X.
Yeah. But rather, he already been in this workflow for a good amount of time, and that's why he was able to use these tools in a really efficient manner. And I think this is the expertise that they can buy with us, that I think they are also capable of it. Right, so and I wouldn't say they shouldn't do it. So if somebody is able to do it for 2 months at home, do it. And I think this is the...
But if you want faster,
then
so that's the biggest advantage for your client, is that it's going to get better bang for the buck.
Yeah, basically the biggest advantage with this approach, that in 2 months, in 3 months, we can deliver 8, 7, 10, 5 different prototypes. And we can validate good amount of different value propositions, and we can figure out the best. And while the client is able to focus on the use case itself and the business problems themselves, and basically validate these ideas from the point of view, what are the real problems
so
there?
It's really about experimentation.
Exactly.
Making experimentation broader and richer by giving more options.
Exactly.
More opportunity space.
Exactly.
Yeah, it makes so much sense. But from the customer perspective, sometimes not easy, pillow to swallow, because they might say,
definitely.
so many experiments. Yeah, this is good, man. Just ship it.
Yeah, it's definitely. So that's why we have written about this whole topic, a white paper.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think we kind of have a role to educate people here, and I think it haven't changed. So 8 years ago, still the biggest bottleneck with clients was to teach them about agile, to teach them about lean product development, and it still is. Now it's just super powered with AI, and I think the scissor is opening, and the difference between somebody who's doing lean development, AI powered lean development, compared to, okay, we will build something from ground up, is way bigger than it was 8 years ago. So if you are not doing it, you will have a way bigger problem than compared to others. So yeah.
All right. So
it's a hard pill to swallow, but they have to learn it.
So let's maybe try to give some tactical advice here for companies that are maybe giving the first steps, or they're finding AI still to be complex and a daunting field. What advice would you go and give to these businesses or startups that are starting to explore AI as their product? Because we were also talking about this before, and for lots of companies, let's put a chatbot in our
yeah. It's a good question. I think we talked a good amount of experimentation, but I think it's also important to not to go into scale right now. And by scale, I mean, do not invest a good amount of time on building on your own infrastructure. Do not train your own model from ground up or something like that. Because yes, these are having their places, but I think these are the steps you need to do in a well-established product and in a well-established value proposition of that new feature. So first, just experiment with things that are the cheapest, the easiest. And by cheapest, I really mean cheapest from the time perspective. Because yes, maybe it's more expensive to use cloud compared to ChatGPT or something like that. Or one API is more expensive than the other. But to validate it for 1,000 users or something like that is still cheap. So a bit expensive times not a good amount of users is still not a big amount of money. And then figure out the feasibility. Because feasibility studies, if you do a feasibility study, that would change every month. Like the prices of these AI models, the self-hosting of these AI models, the infrastructure around these AI models are changing every month. So if you do a feasibility study now, it's going to be obsolete in 3 months.
You don't want to over-optimize.
Exactly.
Really, right? But one of the things that it's also a contrarian voice, so it seems to me, to lots of people saying, these are just wrappers around ChatGPT,
yeah.
right? So nothing wrong against it.
Yeah, I think basically that's the future. So
wrappers.
I think what a business needs to figure out, the context or the prompt engineering that they have in their business realm or in their domain. And if they don't figure that out, they're gonna lag behind those companies that are figured out their prompts to these self-hosted things.
Yeah, that's one of the deepest things I've heard in a while. So what you're saying is that prompt, your competitive advantage will rely a lot on how much you understand the prompt engineering around your specific domain.
Exactly.
Okay.
And I think you need to develop that, and that's why I think businesses need to focus on their business problems and related prompt engineering to that. And the experimentation out of that is freaking cheap. It's just a single ChatGPT subscription and figure out your prompts. It's a good amount of time. It's hard and so on, but it really requires
okay, so
somebody who knows prompting and somebody who knows the business domain.
right, how can they start doing that?
Uh,
If you have a business, you are a small owner.
Yeah.
What do you do?
I think one is to make AI tools first-class citizens in your business. Many of the cases, so if you are a small or even a bigger business and you hire a business person and they don't know how to use Excel, you would fire
Yeah,
them.
right. You will not hire them.
If you should treat ChatGPT the same way. If they haven't used ChatGPT, then either fire them or teach them and make it as essential to use these tools and have it in your business processes as Excel or any of the basic tools
to create agents, to create specific.
To do whatever. Just try it and play around and figure out how is it going to be useful.
Can you give a specific example?
Yeah, I think it's for example, in Bobcats, right away when somebody joins, one of the first software that we sign up for them is a Cloud and ChatGPT subscription.
Right, you give them a subscription.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think it's still kind of not the default in companies, and I don't know why.
Yeah, it's not. I agree with you. I don't think it's still the default.
And it should be the default. And basically, what just giving this right away, we have seen that basically everybody started to play around with it.
Yeah, it's a stance. Okay?
Yeah,
you're making.
Yeah,
a
it's like
stance
it's as you get the Google workspace.
Right. We are an AI friendly.
Yeah.
You said, AI. It's the first class citizen.
And I think if you provide and also you basically show and tell about your successes. So whenever I figure that, for example, I was able to learn a certain technology way better with AI than before, right away in a show and tell session inside the company, I would show that and tell examples and have a conversation about it. And basically this...
So you're sharing best practices.
Yeah, exactly.
Inside the company.
And I think if you have this culture around it, then the business problems will find their way. People will figure out, okay, if I have to manually do this job, maybe I should try to do it with ChatGPT with this repetitive thing, and it's going to be easier. And yeah, the first 3 prompts are not going to be the best and so on, but then eventually you will get there and so on.
Giving people the space and the opportunity to learn about it.
And also to space where they are able to share and talk about it. Because yes, it's a new thing. It's hard. Right away, I think most of the people just write a prompt. Oh, it's a dumb answer. So I wouldn't use it. And I think this is the barrier that companies need to jump. That, okay, normalize to use. For example, many of the cases I still get that, oh, sorry, I just made this email with ChatGPT. And you shouldn't say just. You're not going to say, I made this spreadsheet just
that's
with...
true. People underplay the fact that they use ChatGPT. They don't overplay. They'll say, oh, yeah, and I used ChatGPT, right?
No, don't say just. Yeah. How did you use it? What was your trick that it ended up well on the end and so on?
That's so true.
Yeah.
Okay, so everything is, like you said, rapidly changing, especially for engineering. And there's little point in trying to do some things, but or predicting the future. But what are some of the most exciting trends in AI that you're currently following or very bullish about?
I'm most excited about big players, and I'm not talking about Claude and ChatGPT, but rather big product players like Miro and something like that, integrating AI tools. And I think that's a good example of this. Have they figured out their prompting for their user needs? Because remember, even in the scale of Miro, I don't know if they're going to host their or train their models. I'm pretty sure they're not going to train something from ground up, but rather they use a Llama model or something like that. They figure out the cheapest way to use it. But I think what's going to happen that each of the tools that we are using would have some kind of an AI feature in it. And nowadays, everybody is just putting in features like summarization or something like that. But there is a 10% of features that's going to change the world. And I'm most curious about these use cases. And I think it's not going to be like, at least in the short term, that we will have the all-powerful AGI tool in a GPT-like fashion, but rather we will have these small solutions with amazing prompts figured out in the background that would change lives in normal workflows that we have.
Yeah. I mean, yesterday I had a call with, a startup, actually very keen to the project you had on the bootcamp, and they reached out to me and they said, I want to pick your brain, Andre.
Yeah.
For just to know a little bit about the strategy and what should I do, which is something people still do with people. I tend to pick ChatGPT's brain a lot to discuss stuff. And surprisingly, the results are actually quite okay. And sometimes even, surprisingly, right? Interesting, because it gives you lots of ideas. Oh man, I would never really think about it. But we did. Like at the end, Zoom has this feature which is summarize the conversation. So I centered the summary of the conversation at the end. I still don't see people doing that a lot. So this would be an impossible feature to do 3 years ago. Even if you would hire a human, right? This would take maybe a week long. Then
exactly.
people would have to transliterate. Then we have to do, the entire summary. And you would have to pay hundreds of euros for someone to do this for you. But now that you have it for granted, it's just, it basically delivers to you the moment that the call is done. I don't see people actually using it that much,
it's still
which
not
is surprising for myself.
I think there are already workflows that can be like 10 times more efficient with these kind of AI features or AI-driven workflows. And people are still not using them, either because they are afraid of these tools or had bad experiences.
Or maybe the culture is still not there.
And it's a learning curve.
It's a learning curve.
Definitely. I'm pretty sure there are hundreds of spots where I could use AI in my workflows and I could be more efficient.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel that so many times. Totally. So let's do this game before we wrap this up. It's called This or That kind of game. So and you are a remote worker, so I think this will resonate with you. Morning meetings or evening calls?
Definitely evening calls.
Really? What happens to your walks at the beach?
It's really nice that
you can do
Portugal is close to the time zone end, so the sunset is really late. So even like in 8 o'clock in the summer, after 8 o'clock you will have a sunset. So even in a 7 p.m. meeting, it's totally possible to check out the sunset. I'm just not a morning person.
Okay, well, good we did this podcast recording close to lunchtime. Digital tools or traditional methods?
It's a cheesy answer, but both. Lean is a traditional method and AI is a digital tool. And if you don't use the traditional methods on digital tools, then you're still going to suck.
I think I know the answer to this one, but you might want to add something here. Working remotely or in the office?
I would say also kind of both. So I definitely have the privilege that Hungary is not that far, and with these smaller airlines, it's totally possible to get home easily. So every quarter I visit the office and I meet with people. So I think you definitely need the face-to-face as well. But you also need the long-run flexibility, but sometimes face-to-face.
Totally. All right. Data-driven decisions or intuition-based choices? And we have had an entire podcast discussing about this, but still.
Data is king. I think because you can have endless discussions if you just about intuition. And the data right away shows that you shouldn't even talk about it.
So when you have these conversations with your clients and you had this experimentation and it's going against their intuition because maybe they say, this is the idea that I'm in love with, right?
Yeah.
And these are always in love relationships because people get in love with the solution. How do you show them the data? What is your go-to strategy for that?
I think that's the toughest job, and I think the most important part is to have empathy about the whole thing. Why they are really cling to that idea? Why they are really happy about that idea? What's the motive behind it? Is it their status? Is it their idea or happiness about the idea and so on? And basically you need to show the opposite or the problem about it in a way that doesn't destroy that interior motive in the background. I think it's mostly about empathy, and I think we need to treat our clients as they were our co-founders in their startups. So, and if I would have conversations about our business as a co-founder, I treat my co-founders as equals. I really consider their feelings and so on. So I think you should do the same with clients and consider themselves as you are in the exact same boat and we are just the technical co-founder in that business.
Right. Okay. So mentorship or self-learning?
I think mentorship, but I'm definitely biased because I built a school for almost 8 years. So,
but for yourself, I mean, the question is you has the
and definitely mentorship for me as well. Without my cousin's help, I wouldn't started my career. Without speaking with inspiring people all the time, I wouldn't be where I am. So I think everybody who says self-made, they are basically forgetting all the people that that helped in the background.
Yeah, they just have amnesia.
Yeah, exactly.
Just forgetting everyone else. Man. That's so true. I mean, that's so true.
Yeah.
Books or podcasts for learning, or anything else really? I mean, what works for you?
I would say books, but audiobooks. I have a severe dyslexia. I'm really bad with reading, but audiobooks basically changed how much I can consume. And I love some of the podcasts, but I really like the format of books that are going really deeply into some kind of a problem.
Even technical audiobooks?
Definitely not learning a new language.
Right.
But more soft skill like technical things like technical management, technical strategies and so on. There are amazing books.
Anything you would recommend?
Like Software Engineering at Google is a really nice audiobook. And it's really technical, but it also really shows the strategies that Google is using.
Was it written by a software engineer at Google?
Yeah.
Wow.
Or maybe
not.
Oh, because there are so.
Okay.
There's so much. I've listened to it. I think 3 years ago, so I don't remember if it's somebody that interviewed, but I think it's a Googler. Yeah. I also really like books that are about social psychology or psychology in general. Thinking Fast and Slow is one of the. I think any kind of business book you read, there's gonna be a quote about Thinking Fast and Slow, and I think it's better to read or listen to Thinking Fast and Slow than any of the other books that are recommending it.
Yeah, all the derivatives.
Yeah, exactly.
Just to wrap this up, what is the best advice you have received in your career?
That's a tough question. I think any kind of advice that was about experimentation. I remember one of the friends of my cousin told me when I was a really junior person that you should just join new companies and try them for half a year. And I felt weird because that's not.
That's not what an HR person
will
tell you, right?
But also
for half a year.
Gave me that mindset that it's totally fine to just try things. And And eventually I kind of did that with these big companies, but also I was able to have that mindset inside my own companies to try a good amount of different things and don't be afraid and don't put yourself in a single box that I'm this kind of person. So to give an example, when I started my career as a tech person, I wouldn't have think that I'm going to speak either in podcasts or conferences or meetups or anything like that. Because I was putting myself that I'm a coder person.
Right.
But because of this, try new things, experiment with things, I figured that it's so cool to meet with other people, to get inspired and
Totally.
and so on.
We are in many ways our worst enemies of I know that's a cliche thing to say, but we are in many ways limiting ourselves to a certain belief system that it's preventing us from exploring other possibilities.
Yeah.
I was actually thinking about that today when I was watching someone on LinkedIn. It's like, this guy is speaking about this, really? But then I thought about why am I having this, thinking about this person, right? I mean, if he's talking about this stuff and he's passionate about it, why not? Right?
Yeah. And also maybe that person is just the beginning of that road.
Yes,
and this
absolutely.
is how they gonna get there in 10 years.
Absolutely. And passion and motivation is the hardest currency to get in the corporate world and in the workplace out there, right? Because most people struggle to get it. Okay, so Tamas, where can people reach out to you and find you and ask for advice if that's what they want?
In one hand, see you at the conference. I'm definitely happy to meet in person. I'm Egdice at X, so message me or just tweet me. And also on bobcatscoding.com, you can find my LinkedIn and on all the contacts. So write me. I'm open to any discussion.
Are you answering people usually online?
Yeah, definitely.
Or going back?
I really love to talk about any topic.
Okay, great. So there you have it. Thank you so much for being
Thank you
with
for
us.
the opportunity.
Thanks.